Right now, the world is on the brink. NATO will enter into war with Russia, and urgent decisions could destroy the Russian Federation. In the US, real chaos is unfolding that will take down Trump. He has already declared war on the protesters. The F-16 rushed into battle and did the incredible. An urgent message from the Kremlin. Putin is going all in. A nuclear strike on Kyiv. This statement stunned everyone. All of this and more in our program Hotspot. Incredible! While the world holds its breath, France is making a decisive move. They are launching large-scale drone production right on Ukrainian territory. This isn't just news, it's a game changer and could become a real nightmare for the enemy. All the details of this sensational decision that has shocked every watch in our report.
Military cooperation between Ukraine and France is reaching an entirely new level. The head of the French Ministry of Defense announced the creation of a joint venture for the production of military equipment and officially unveiled the joint production of drones in our country.
We are launching an entirely new partnership under which a major French automotive company will join forces with French defense, small and medium-sized enterprises to set up production lines in Ukraine for manufacturing drones.
The French minister called this partnership mutually beneficial for both official Paris and Kyiv. Even though the details of the upcoming cooperation and information about the enterprise are being kept secret, domestic analysts consider this a powerful boost for the rapidly developing Ukrainian defense industry.
Ukrainian designers and engineers who are developing new models of drones are advancing by leaps and bounds. That's really cool. They're doing a fantastic job.
Even the French Minister of Defense cannot hide his admiration for our defense industry. Le Cornu believes that Ukrainians are the best in Europe when it comes to the development and use of drones. And for France, it is a great honor that our defenders have agreed to share their unique experience with Europe.
There is no need to ask French citizens to work on the production line in Ukraine. Ukrainians are better than us at developing drones and, most importantly, at shaping the doctrine of their use.
All drones produced at the newly established Ukrainian-French factory will be intended for the armed forces of Ukraine. In the future, these drones will also become available to the French. Additionally, Ukraine will provide official feedback to Paris on the use of these drones in combat conditions. The first such data should be sent to our Western partners very soon.
Now, drones can take off, swim, or crawl out anywhere and send their regards to Russian equipment.
Ukraine has combat experience, while France has a powerful industrial base. This is a mutually beneficial and strategic partnership.
The Ukrainian and French ministers also plan to expand industrial cooperation, including the participation of Western companies in the production of other equipment for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. In particular, in addition to drones, Ukrainian-French production of air defense systems is being discussed. It is expected that assembly could take place both in our country and on French territory.
A bloodbath is being prepared. Protests against Trump have reached a critical point, and the president has gone all in. US security forces have been thrown into the fray. It's brutal over there. Meanwhile, an urgent message is coming from the Kremlin. Putin is convening an expanded meeting of the Security Council. What is he planning? This will surprise you. All the details coming up. US President Donald Trump has threatened protesters in Los Angeles with a crackdown by the National Guard. Trump blamed California Governor Gavin Newsom for the protests themselves.
The danger is that there are a lot of privately owned firearms in America. There is a more liberal attitude toward gun owners. And that's the problem, I think.
Meanwhile, a professor from New York University classified Trump's actions as deliberate, saying they provoked the protests in Los Angeles.
In any case, even this toughening of migration policy could have been carried out more gently. For example, all the planned measures could, in practice, be put into full effect and carried out, if necessary, as if for future migrants.
As usual, Russia is the one stirring up provocations and tricks. Russians felt a fleeting sense of joy and pride that their army left peaceful Ukrainians without a roof over their heads last night. And Putin's aide Vladimir Medinsky, who headed the Russian delegation in peace negotiations to resolve the war, stated that Russians are asking to strike large Ukrainian cities with the Oreshnik
By the way, after the negotiations, Russia already tried to strike with the Oreshnik. It's just that the Oreshnik itself refused at that time, or more precisely, it simply failed to launch. The Russians tried to appear both smart and attractive, but even NATO no longer believes them. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte believes that Russia is increasing its military potential and will be ready to attack NATO countries within the next 5 years. At the end of June, a NATO summit is planned in The Hague. Ukraine expects decisions from its partners that will strengthen its defense.
Ukraine will participate as an invited country. This is important for us. There is a major war going on in Europe, the Russian-Ukrainian war, and it is simply impossible not to discuss this topic. That's why the leader of Ukraine is there, meeting with everyone, with all the leaders of NATO countries. He knows everyone. There have been meetings with all of them. So it's only natural to continue this conversation, making use of the NATO platform as well. I think that it's possible the president of Ukraine will take part in the meeting of defense representatives from NATO countries, which will also be taking place in parallel at the NATO summit. And this is a very important issue for us. And it is precisely President Zelensky's presence there that is very important for us.
On Monday, Mark Rutte stated that the promise by NATO country leaders to eventually admit Ukraine will remain in force, even if it is not mentioned in the communiqué following the upcoming alliance summit.
NATO needs us, and we need NATO as well. Of course, it is our support, it is our assistance. We all clearly understand how difficult it would be for us today without the help of NATO countries. But for Russia, the possibility and, so to speak, the effectiveness of attacking a NATO country is actually increasing right now.
This week, the Russians announced a major meeting of the Security Council. They are not disclosing what will be discussed. However, they did say that supposedly many people are waiting for this meeting. Experts are naming several possible scenarios for how the situation might develop during the meeting. The outcome could be either another wave of mobilization and preparing Russians for a prolonged war with Ukraine, or a decision to once again seek manpower support from North Korea. Also, just to play on people's nerves, they might brazenly annex Ukrainian territories into Russia, or they might end up not deciding anything at all. That scenario is also being considered.
Chaos in the USA. California has declared war on Trump. Los Angeles is ablaze. The National Guard is on the streets. The people's anger has reached its limit. The city streets have turned into a battlefield, and this is just the beginning. We will reveal what this wave of public outrage could mean for Trump. This might not just be a protest, but the beginning of the end for his political career, or even something much worse. Stay tuned. I'm not done yet.
More than 100 migrants have been arrested in less than a week. This became the main reason for the mass protests in California. Rioters threw stones at border patrol vehicles, blocked the main highway, and set several driverless cars on fire. In response, law enforcement used rubber bullets and tear gas.
Why did the protests erupt? Because people were outraged by the arrests carried out by immigration police. These arrests were happening right in Los Angeles. And simply put, Los Angeles is a democratic city with people who are opposed to Trump living there.
The main demand of the demonstrators is to stop the large-scale immigration raids. One of the key campaign promises of the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, is to crack down on migrants. He said that within the first year after his return to the White House, 1 million undocumented immigrants would be deported. But as soon as the raids began, they were met with fierce resistance. After the protest began in California, White House Press Secretary Abigail Jackson told Reuters that there is chaos, violence, and lawlessness on the streets of Los Angeles. At first, Trump called the unrest in California an invasion and occupation by migrants on his social network, Truth Social. A little later, he gave the order to send 2,000 National Guard troops to the city, after which local authorities accused Washington of escalating the situation. California Governor Gavin Newsom officially demanded that the U.S. presidential administration revoke the decision on the illegal deployment of troops.
We didn't have any problems until Trump got involved. This is a serious violation of state sovereignty, an incitement of tensions, and a diversion of resources from where they are truly needed.
Newsom stated that it is he, as the head of the region, who should decide whether or not to seek help from the federal authorities. Unless the situation involves a foreign invasion or uprisings that threaten state authority, deploying National Guard troops in Los Angeles under Washington's control threatens to seriously escalate the situation.
To deploy, the National Guard, I mean, it seems to me that there really wasn't much justification for it. And this is also confirmed by the fact that yesterday, close to midnight, Donald Trump wrote on his social network Truth that the National Guard did a great job. They performed their duties excellently. So in other words, everything is already fine after 2 days of unrest. But the problem is that according to the governor of California, by last night, those 2,000 National Guardsmen still hadn't been deployed anywhere and they hadn't done anything yet. So it turns out that if you believe the state governor, everything calmed down and got better on its own.
The governor of California was also supported by Democratic governors in other U.S. states. 22 governors signed a joint statement against the deployment of the National Guard.
President Trump's decision to authorize the deployment of the National Guard in California is, in what many see as, a troubling abuse of power.
During the election campaign, Trump's rhetoric was aimed at cracking down on immigrants. But since he took office, the number of illegal migrants being deported from the country has remained the same as it was under Biden. The numbers of those deported and detained are not increasing, and the raids are leading to large-scale protests. And it seems that, just as with the issue of quickly ending the war in Ukraine, Trump has no real solution to the migrant problem, only loud statements.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
There are only loud statements.
No one expected this. An F-16 destroyed the enemy's invincible Sukhoi. A hellish battle. Armor secrets for the front line. Ukraine has received the latest armored vehicles. This will change everything. Russia is changing its tactics. Fewer assaults, more aviation. What should we expect in Donbass? We will show the truth about what is happening at the front. Details, figures, and footage right now.
F-16 versus Su-35, the first victory in history of a NATO fighter over Russia's best aircraft. On June 7th, something happened in the skies over the Kursk region that will go down in the textbooks of military aviation. For the first time in history, an F-16 fighter shot down a Russian Su-35 in an air battle. This strike was carried out by Ukraine, and it wasn't just a single aircraft, but a coordinated system where every link worked precisely. According to Bild, the operation began as a routine combat sortie. Ukrainian F-16s struck Russian targets near the border. In response, the Russians scrambled a Su-35, one of the most advanced fighters in the Russian arsenal. But this was a calculated move. They were already waiting for the interception. The Ukrainians used not only F-16s with missiles and guided bombs, but also a Swedish Saab 340 reconnaissance aircraft, which serves as their eyes in the sky. It was this aircraft that detected the target 200 to 300 kilometers from the border and relayed the coordinates to the Ukrainian fighter. When the Su-35 entered the kill zone, the F-16 fired an AIM-120 missile. It is capable of hitting targets at a distance of up to 50 kilometers. Everything worked flawlessly. The Russian fighter was shot down 16 kilometers from the Ukrainian border near the city of Korenevo. According to Russian media, the Su-35 pilot managed to eject. The Ukrainian F-16 returned to base without any losses. This is not just a victory in the air, it's a symbolic turning point. For the first time, a NATO fighter not only encountered the Su-35 but destroyed it in real combat, and did so in coordination with Western intelligence and command systems. Officially, the armed forces of Ukraine confirmed the destruction of the Su-35, but did not provide details about the fate of the pilot. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian army is receiving the latest Varta 2 and Herza 2 vehicles. The Ministry of Defense has officially approved 2 new tactical armored vehicles, Varta 2 and Herza 2, for use by Ukraine's defense forces. Both are the result of Ukrainian development, taking into account wartime experience and real requests from the front lines. Varta 2 is tough, aggressive, and technologically advanced. This MRAP class armored vehicle was created as a universal platform. It is produced in 3 versions, The basic model, a variant with an armored turret for a 12.7mm machine gun, and a modification with a remotely controlled combat module for armaments of 12.7, 4.5 or 30mm. The vehicle is fully protected. Ballistic resistance is at PSZA level 6, withstanding 7.62 by 54mm bullets and BTR-2 from a distance of 10 meters. It also has mine protection. The bottom of this vehicle can withstand up to 8 kilograms in TNT equivalent. Inside there are anti-mine seats, a suspended floor, dampers and reinforcements. Under the hood is a 6.7-liter turbo diesel engine with an automatic transmission. The vehicle is equipped with navigation, camouflage, fire suppression and air filtration systems and is ready for chemical and biological threats. Gerza 2 is an evolution based on experience. This is an upgraded, already proven vehicle Gerza 1 which has been actively used at the front. The model received reinforced armor protection, better off-road capability, and increased resistance to explosions. The main features include the same reliable 6.7-liter turbo diesel engine, automatic transmission, dual-circuit braking system, and improved suspension. The troop compartment can withstand armor-piercing incendiary bullets of 7.6 to 39mm and 7.6 to 54mm calibers. The V-shaped hull can withstand mines with up to 8 kilograms of TNT equivalent. Herza 2 has a universal mount for any machine gun of 14.5mm caliber, making it a convenient platform for fire support in any conditions. These are not just vehicles, they are an armored shield created in Ukraine. And most importantly, this equipment has already been officially approved and is ready for combat operations. Meanwhile, Russia is changing its tactics in the Donbass. In the Toretsk, Kramatorsk and Siversk directions, a decrease in the number of assault actions has been observed. However, Russian forces have begun to actively use tactical aviation. This was reported by a spokesperson from Luhansk. According to him, the average daily number of assaults is now about 20 to 21. Compared to April, this is a slight decrease. Instead, airstrikes have increased, and the enemy is actively destroying buildings in small settlements, especially in the Toretsk direction. The new focus is on mobility rather than armor. The Russians are using heavy armored vehicles less and less frequently. Instead, assaults are being carried out on motorcycles, quad bikes and buggies. The main objective is a rapid breakthrough into the settlement, securing it and waiting for reinforcements for 1 to 3 days. Russia is also actively sending wounded soldiers back to the front. Recovery is carried out as quickly as possible to increase troop numbers for the summer offensive campaign. At the same time, it is difficult to assess the actual number of personnel in the different directions. Rotation is happening constantly. Enemy artillery hides, but not for long. The occupiers try to use artillery covertly to avoid being hit. However, the defense forces manage to destroy enemy guns using fiber optic drones. Overall, control is being maintained. In the Yablonivka direction, Ukrainian forces have managed to stabilize the situation. Thanks to FPV drones and artillery, the enemy is suffering significant losses. The first waves of the assault are destroyed before they even have a chance to gain a foothold. Overall, the situation is difficult but remains under control. That's all for today. Tune in tomorrow for more news.
2 targets with 1 bomb. The Ukrainian armed forces blew up a Russian infantry position and an ammunition depot in the southern direction. The target was detected by Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance, which quickly relayed the coordinates to the Air Force. A MiG-29 fighter crew delivered a precise strike using a French high-precision Hammer aerial bomb. As a result, the enemy's arsenal was destroyed and their personnel eliminated. Ukrainian defenders also blew up 3 more Russian field depots in the Kupiansk direction. The soldiers note that this was a real jackpot since the depots contained the Russian occupiers' fuel and lubricants, ammunition and even provisions.
And all of that was taken out by a single little FPV drone. Of course, it couldn't contain its joy at such a variety and literally exploded with happiness. You could say we emptied the enemy's storehouses. From a statement by the 14th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces on Facebook.
According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, since the beginning of the day, Ukrainian soldiers have repelled 4 attacks by Russian occupiers in the Kupiansk direction. 4 assaults were also repelled in the Lyman, Kramatorsk and Orikhiv directions. Here the soldiers note the excellent, well-coordinated teamwork between drone operators and artillery.
80% of artillery success depends on the crew's coordinated work, the accuracy of targeting, and the speed of loading the gun in order to effectively strike enemy infantry while they are still approaching our positions.
In addition, according to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the enemy made 2 unsuccessful attempts to advance in the Pridniprovsky direction. Ukrainian soldiers also repelled 3 Russian attacks each on the Huliaipol and Kharkiv sectors of the front, another 10 assaults in the Kursk region, and 8 more each in the Novopavlivka and Toretsk directions.
During the last operation, when we were being directed, they kept coming for more than a week. There was a concrete shelter nearby from which we had to drive them out, and they kept getting reinforcements from time to time, which we successfully destroyed.
But Ukrainian soldiers repelled the most Russian attacks in the Pokrovsk direction. The Russian occupation army made 21 unsuccessful attempts to push Ukrainian defenders from their positions.
Their main objectives right now are to utterly and completely wipe Pokrovsk off the map, erasing it entirely from existence, so to encircle it, surrounding the city with their forces. That is to say, with the same ultimate goal, in their view, essentially, of completely destroying our forces that are stationed there. They haven't been able to do this for months, and it's unlikely they'll succeed anytime soon. Unless they manage to find some reserve somewhere. And where are the reserves? The reserves are currently in the north, specifically in the Kursk direction, in the Sumy direction. This is the group of forces that is trying to push out our units operating in the Kursk region. And they're doing this in two areas, one in the direction of Sudzha, and the second area is around Tetkino. In the Tetkino area, that's where our defenders are actually having success. In fact, south of the same, the enemy's group of forces has been cut off. In effect, this is an operational encirclement.
They promise good, well-paid jobs, but then send them to the front. According to the British publication The Telegraph, this is exactly how Russia lures Africans into fighting against Ukraine. Agents from Russia promise Africans jobs, but upon arrival they force them to sign a contract with the Russian army. Ukrainian soldiers have repeatedly shown captured Africans who surrendered. In addition, the partisan movement Atesh claims that employees of the so-called military commandant's office of the self-proclaimed LNR are also being thrown into these meat assaults. The reason is a severe shortage of manpower at the front.
Without preparation, without choice, people from the rear are being thrown into the combat zone just to plug the gaps in the Kremlin front. This is yet another sign of the personnel and moral crisis in the Russian army and its puppet structures. And this is according to a message from the Atesh movement on Telegram.
NATO is preparing for Armageddon. The alliance has suddenly realized the inevitability of war with Russia, and you won't believe what they're planning. We'll tell you how NATO is radically overhauling its strategy to be ready for any turn of events. Is a new Cold War coming, or something much worse? This could destroy Russia. Watch this.
The threat is getting closer and the defense is getting stronger.
We all truly want Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine to ultimately end with a just and lasting peace. And we absolutely and fully support President Trump's urgent and determined efforts to help stop the bloodshed.
NATO has agreed to increase its defense capabilities. This became the key topic at the meeting of defense ministers from NATO member countries, which took place in Brussels. The alliance officially plans to multiply its military spending from 2 to 5% of GDP. This is also what the United States expects from its allies.
I will propose to our partners a target, 5% of spending on defense, of which 3.5% should come from GDP. These are the main defense expenditures. And another 1.5% of GDP is for investments related to defense, such as infrastructure spending.
The point is for the alliance to be able to implement the strategic defense plans adopted at the Vilnius summit 2 years ago.
I want to emphasize that this is a historic moment for Europe. If we can reach 5% by 2030 or 2032, we will achieve a level of defense investment that was at its peak during the Cold War. And we need to strengthen our ability to deter and defend, and to continue living in peace.
It is the Russian threat that is forcing allies to spend more. The NATO Secretary General has outlined priority areas for the member countries.
We need additional resources, more troops, and enhanced capabilities in order to be fully and thoroughly prepared for any potential threat, and to thoroughly implement our comprehensive collective defense plans. This includes air and missile defense systems, long-range precision weapon systems, robust logistics, as well as large, well-equipped ground forces, all of which are essential.
The meeting of NATO defense ministers was positive. The final decision will be made by the leaders at the summit in The Hague, which will take place in less than 3 weeks.
To meet these needs, alliance members will have to invest much more in defense. That is the work that awaits us in The Hague.
This is the largest military buildup since the Cold War. Poland and the Baltic states are planning to purchase boats and submarines to deter the Russian Federation.
Our country understands defense issues very well in the context of the Russian threat. But for us, it is important that other countries follow the same path as Poland. Of course, this is neither easy nor simple. However, everything indicates that it is possible.
NATO is preparing for an era of confrontation. It is no secret that Russia is preparing for a possible large-scale war with NATO.
We do not see any progress toward a ceasefire. It is obvious that Putin is still playing games and there are no signs that the Russians want peace. What we are doing on the European side is increasing the pressure by working on the next packages of sanctions.
The Russian Federation has stepped up its monitoring of NATO activities in the Baltic Sea and has conducted exercises. The Russian Federation is building up forces at the border with Finland. The Russian Federation could start a large-scale war in Europe within 5 years if it perceives NATO as weak, according to Danish intelligence forecasts.
If we do not start taking action now, the situation could become critical in 4 or 5 years. We need to increase investment in defense and prepare for possible challenges.
The Russians have repeatedly resorted to shows of force and provocations, so it is important to act wisely and in a coordinated manner. The whole world knows that the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin intends to achieve his goals solely by force.
Urgent! A missile from the Ukrainian armed forces will destroy the Kremlin. Ukraine has tested a missile that can wipe Moscow off the face of the earth and finally put an end to the Crimean bridge. Panic in Russia on F-16 has entered the fight. For the first time in history, an American fighter jet has done in Ukraine what everyone was talking about. And Medinsky openly declares the launch of a nuclear missile. Is this the beginning of the apocalypse? Details coming up.
Russia is preparing to strike Ukraine with the Oreshnik. According to Medinsky, it is the Russian people themselves who are demanding such revenge. Well then, Ukrainian ballistic forces are ready to respond. The occupiers are in for some surprises. The Ukrainian armed forces have successfully conducted combat tests of a new domestically produced ballistic missile. Russia continues its criminal cooperation with North Korea during this time. Putin and Kim Jong-un have agreed to establish facilities for the production of Shahed strike drones on North Korean territory. We are talking about modifications of the Harpy and Geran drones, stated the head of Ukraine's intelligence directorate, Kirilo Budanov. Furthermore, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte believes that Russia is increasing its military capabilities and will be ready to attack alliance member states within the next 5 years. And a ceasefire in Ukraine would allow it to stockpile weapons, increasing the risks for NATO.
The first is the so-called Suwałki corridor. This would be a direct incursion into the territory of NATO countries, specifically Poland and the Baltic states. The second is the escalation of military tensions in the Baltic Sea. This involves territorial claims against Sweden regarding the island of Gotland. And third, there is the escalation of tensions on the Russian-Finnish border.
It is known that last week, NATO air policing fighters in the Baltic states took to the air 3 times to intercept Russian military aircraft that were violating flight regulations. And in the Ukrainian region, a Russian Su-35 fighter jet was ambushed. Its coordinates were relayed to an F-16 pilot, who then shot down the enemy aircraft. Putin's mega fighter was defeated, which became a real humiliation for the Russian dictator.
First and foremost, this is a blow to the prestige of the Russian Federation. That is, aside from the military aspect, this episode primarily has informational and political significance. The capabilities of the F-16 have been demonstrated. And these aren't even the latest developments of the American military-industrial complex. We're talking about the F-35 at the moment when it destroyed a Russian Federation aircraft.
Meanwhile, in Russia, everything is as usual. In other words, it was another restless night and morning. Explosions were heard in Tatarstan, the Moscow region, and other areas. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, during the night, Russian air defense forces allegedly intercepted and destroyed 102 drones. And in Sudzha, a Russian soldier fired a grenade launcher at a house just for fun. The great Russian soul, what more can you say? It was later revealed that he was a member of the Akhmat Special Forces, but punishment was not long in coming. He died in a car accident.
Can you imagine? It just happened right in front of us, completely out of the blue.
But what about something serious and truly important? The Kremlin intends to annex at least 5 more Ukrainian regions, specifically Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Kyiv, Odessa, and Mykolaiv. This is stated in a report by the Institute for the Study of War.
The information is not accurate. At the moment, the intensification of hostilities in the direction of the Dnipropetrovsk region should be regarded as an element of military and political pressure on the Ukrainian leadership, aimed at forcing both the military and political leadership of our country to comply with the Russian ultimatum to withdraw units of the Ukrainian defense forces, primarily from the territories of Luhansk and Donetsk regions under their control. This statement essentially repeats Russian narratives about the possible occupation of Ukrainian regions as part of the so-called Novorossiya project.
Let us recall that Putin's mustachioed spokesman Peskov stated the day before that Russia had launched an offensive in the Dnipropetrovsk region as part of creating a buffer zone in Ukraine.
That's all for now. Watch more breaking news and exclusive updates from the front in our next episode.